Palantir gets an unbelievable $50 price target, but also huge wins for their international business, chaos around the world, as well as some possible political tailwinds and many more. So, looking at the stock first, exciting price action hitting into the mid $29 range, where we keep seeing higher ceilings approaching that $30 psychological point. So we ended up closing still a little green for the week, so we'll continue to watch these next few weeks leading up to earnings, which will make it much more interesting around this major price point. But really quick before the news, tell me in the comments if you'd imagine being in this price range in the middle of 2024, say like from the beginning of the year. Which also segues perfectly to Palantir's PR to start off the week. Palantir announced the date of their Q2 2024 earnings release officially for Monday, August 5, and this is for after market close. And per usual, there will be the earnings call, which is scheduled for 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And with this announcement, too, they made the earnings question submission and voting available. So if you're curious about anything or want a specific question asked, go and vote for them there. Now, as we get closer, I'll cover the top questions, which seem to be teeing up to the typical questions around growth, which makes sense, though, especially with the current price action and valuation that Palantir is at. And obviously, folks with any clue they can get around growth picking up, they want to get that. So look up that video when you get a chance as we get closer to earnings. Now, next we get a few insider sales transactions this week. We've got Lauren Stat, as well as some of her indirect holdings through her spouse David Stat, selling 7,500 shares. So it's nothing crazy quantity-wise, but a little bit bigger near the end of the week. We had David Glazier offloading 90,000 shares for a couple $1,000,000. Now, I think trading plan wise, a lot of the transactions more likely are planned around earnings because we've typically seen that a lot of these SEC filings come around that time, but we'll keep an eye out for the big sells. Then we get some interesting analyst moves too around their ratings and price targets. First with Mizuho, and yes, they grabbed a lot of attention, probably more than needed, but they downgraded their rating from a neutral to a underperform, while they actually raised their price target from $21 to $22. And the main reasoning around this downgrade is because of the stretch valuation, essentially. And this is not surprising too, since it's really the easy way or easy route to go about Palantir because of the numbers. And you can even say a similar narrative too for Morgan Stanley, who actually had a more dramatic move of keeping their underperform rating, but ballooned their price target from the measly $12 to $20 now. Now, of course, with both of these revised price targets below the current market rate, they're not really risking too much, to be honest, but rather feels like they're just trying to stay on trend in case things work out for them to have a realistic price target in the short term. Now, this next news item got everyone talking. JD Vance was selected by Trump to be his running mate as vice president. Now, as I mentioned in my daily video, I'm not covering the political side of this, if he's even a good VP pick to help Trump win the election, or even his past record politically, but related to Palantir-wise, he has been backed by Peter Thiel and even worked under his investment firm a long while back at Mithril Capital. So he started there as a junior investor, but eventually found his own venture capital firm, where Thiel actually also provided some working capital. Now, that's not the only connection to Palantir, with Thiel obviously being a huge owner still today of Palantir. So even if indirectly a firm he backed is using Palantir, and it's not a stretch of the imagination, he is cognizant that Peter Thiel is heavily connected to it, and that's called Chapter. So we'll see if this actually means anything for Palantir after the election and if he secures the VP office. And honestly, this is still all speculation and just people connecting things, but it's not as simple as if he wins, we win. Lots of different priorities and optics will be at play, of course. Then, talking about more governmental news but internationally, Palantir gets a huge legal win in Germany, where the Bavarian state actually approved the use of Palantir with the Police Task Act. For a quick turnaround and background for those who are new, Germany has basically made it difficult for an easy rollout of Palantir with having a legal basis to do so. So certain individual states have taken on trying out Palantir and rolling them out on police departments, but the wider reaching Vera platform, which would cost millions and of course be millions of people's data, would be up for analysis. And note, these are not only for criminals, but other parties like witnesses and victims and so on. So it's definitely ripe for fear mongering politically, but with this legal win in Bavaria, it's a good first step for setting precedents and maybe for other German states to follow suit after someone takes that nosedive like them. Then we get a huge announcement from Dan Ives, and I'd say a lot of the times we hear some of the same talking points from him, being the golden child of AI and Messi of AI, but what caught the most attention is that $50 price target. This is a massive increase from the previous $35 one here, and $50 would put him over $100 billion at market cap. And really, he knows and acknowledges the valuation makes people feel a little bit squeamish, but business-wise, he sees the overall AI market continue to accelerate with Palantir and AIP being a huge winner in all of this. He even notes their government business shouldn't be underestimated, especially on the growth, so it's not like he only favors the commercial side. But with that, he continues to talk to customers and he just keeps hearing good things from leadership where the AI use cases are continuing to grow. And Palantir, obviously, with their boot camps too, are a huge contributor to educating these organizations, which can in turn effectively use artificial intelligence to then use Palantir's products. So we'll see if he ends up being right, but that massive $50 price target stole all the attention. Then we got Palantir released a new partnership trailer on their YouTube channel with StriveWorks. This is another piece of marketing to show their dominance in the government software space, where they're even partnering up with their competitors and providing the infrastructure of Ontology and Apollo to deploy the platforms for StriveWorks. And this was even acknowledged by Sham himself in the video with the overlap and the StriveWorks speaker, noting what Palantir provides for them of value. So personally, for me, this just makes sense. And Palantir continues to position themselves to be that infrastructure play or even a monopoly, and not very least become a standard of how to provide secure services to the government with an ontology that accurately portrays how AI should be implemented, as well as that additional Apollo aspect of deployment. But in the world too, we got some pretty big headlines affecting some major companies like Snowflake, who had a breach due to some overlooking on the requirements of setting up multi-factor authentication. But also CrowdStrike, the huge cybersecurity endpoint company that had outages across the world with big consequences for lots of industries. But the airlines and the banks did get a lot of attention because of how crucial their infrastructure relies on them. Now, for CrowdStrike, it was more on the bug side that was deployed, but interestingly, both these cases can be related to Palantir's products, with first the general sense of user access and security protocol setup versus for the Snowflake one, while on the deployment side of software they have for Apollo for CrowdStrike. Now, these are still anecdotal cases, but shows the effects that any screw up can have around the world, even touching the lives of everyday normal people. So it's not guaranteed, but Karp has talked about how chaos in the world is where Palantir thrives. So we'll see if this sets them up to win over the long term to be that beacon of safety and security while being able to still leverage your data effectively for AI. And I think the crucial lesson for Palantir is that the opportunity presents itself when others aren't expecting it. And that's one of Palantir's strong suits too. They know they are good, but still, they are constantly trying to build up and innovate rather than to be complacent. They take on fresh projects for the government and commercial side and are literally building out the AI market today with their boot camps. Customers don't know how to use Palantir? Well, we'll literally give them an opportunity at a boot camp to solve their most pressing problems in hours, and then we'll figure out the monetization aspect as well as what else they need. Now, with earnings around the corner, this is still to see if we're still on track and if that narrative is actually playing out in Palantir's favor. But when events like this happen in the world, Palantir is in a position to step in and leverage the situation to not only help themselves, but actually make a difference and try to make the world a better place and hopefully prevent these issues happening in the future. So a very busy week here, but what are your thoughts still below? And I'll see you in the next video.